2006, okay? Now, we're not talking 1806. We're not talking 1406. We're not talking 06 BC. 2006, just the other day. They're going to figure out how fossils form. Now, they're writing about this in one of the highly respected science publications across this planet, okay? Now, check this out. I find this stuff amazing. They say right here, mystery underlies the fossilization, not just of birds, but of most animals. Wait a minute, January 2006, the fossilization process is still just a mystery. You gotta be kidding. Right. So anyway, what they're going to do here, they're hopefully going to gain insights into the fossilization process. That information may lead to more accurate interpretations of the fossil record. All right, now wait a minute. If what they're going to do is going to hopefully lead to an accurate interpretation of the fossil record, that is by definition admitting they don't have an accurate interpretation of the fossil record as of yet. Hopefully this is going to lead to one. January 2006, just the other day. Most organisms live, die, and disappear without leaving any hints they ever existed. Some creatures, however, leave behind trace fossils such as the burrows and footprints. In rare cases, they survive scavengers and decomposition, become buried, and next thing you know, well, let's see what happens. They took some birds, and they buried them in a body of water, in mud, wet muck. The team left the bodies in place for 3 years. When the researchers unearthed their samples, they found that the patterns and extent of the preservation of these birds they buried 3 years earlier were remarkably similar to those seen in actual fossils millions of years old. Now, folks, I want to tell you something, man. I find this stuff amazing. Here, these top more atheistic than ever before scientists are going to intentionally bury birds in wet muck. 3 years later, they go by and dig them up and they're turned to stone. Their conclusion is, oh, these look like the millions of years old ones. You know what? I think the conclusion should have been, well, it doesn't take millions of years. You see, folks, it doesn't take millions of years. It is all a rapid, young, quick time frame issue. But even as of 2006, they still don't know this? Man, these are people that are smarter than the people that put the books together. I don't understand it, man. Hey, how about some fossils made of opal? Opalized fossils. There's a guy in Australia that makes opals in 2 weeks in his garage. You can't tell even with an electron microscope. One he made in 2 weeks, one was found naturally. All kinds of evidence of this kind of stuff. Same with diamonds in a day. People brag about, I mean, there are commercials all across this country about people bragging about how they can make diamonds in a handful of hours. Well, listen, if man can do it in hours, it doesn't take millions of years. That's all there is to it. We had a chance in Kansas, we had a chance to go see the first man-made diamond ever produced. First man-made diamond. It's fascinating stuff. But anyway, nevertheless, now watch this. Everybody look at this thing now. Let's look at Darwin for just a minute. I find this amazing. Darwin, all the textbooks say, he is the father of evolutionary, and look at that word right there, thinking. Darwin had plenty of time to think. Darwin's thinking changed. Ideas that shaped Darwin's thinking. Well, now wait a minute. Hey, Darwin's ideas and such have deeply influenced our way of thinking about ourselves. You know, here's an amazing thing, folks. Again, I think the Bible's got it right. Because you can take a concordance and you can run the references to the word mind and look them up in the Bible and read every one of them. You're going to find some amazing stuff. The battle is for the mind. You see, the way I look at this thing, if the devil can have our minds and get us off thinking in ways we shouldn't be thinking, the actions are going to eventually follow that thought path. They have to. By definition, that is what takes place. That's why whatever goes into the mind, it is imperative that we pay attention because it is going to mold us. Everybody is a product of the stuff that has come into them. That's all there is to it. The influences and such that come in. Well, now wait a minute. What is all this thinking stuff here for just a minute? Now watch this. I want to go back to this biology, Campbell Reese biology book there. Remember, that was the homology issues there, and I said what it's saying here, it says it doesn't make sense if there's a God that put us here, and here's why I say that. Now watch this. I find this amazing. Now let's remember this thinking aspect of things, all right? Look what it says in this book, a biology textbook. Darwin was strongly influenced by the two conclusions that followed directly from the observations of Hutton and Lyell. First, that geologic change results from slow, continuous action rather than sudden events. The earth must be very old, certainly much older than the 6,000 years assigned by many theologians on the basis of biblical inference. In a biology book, they can say the Bible's wrong. They can say they don't have it right, the biblical thing. Well, then somebody ought to be able to defend it. If they're going to ridicule it. Hey, how about this? Darwin read Lyell's Principles of Geology. Remember that for a little bit. While on board the Beagle, Lyell's ideas, together with his own experiences on the Galapagos, had Darwin doubting, that's changing his thinking, the traditional view the earth was static, been created only a few thousand years ago. By acknowledging that earth was very old and constantly changing, Darwin took an important step toward recognizing that life on earth had also evolved. And folks, that is the exact same tactic that's used in the textbooks today, in all the books today. If they can just get the kids to start thinking as a very young child, that it takes millions of years for this stuff to happen, then it will cause them to doubt what the Bible says. And therefore, that's exactly what takes place. Because people respect the books, they respect the people that are teaching out of the books, they believe the museum displays when they go on the big yellow bus to the field trips. They believe that kind of stuff. And it causes their thinking to start changing. Wait a minute, if this takes millions of years, how can this be true? And the book itself says that the Bible is wrong. The biblical theologians are wrong. That has consequences on the thinking path and patterns. But nevertheless, it's incredible. Now watch this. We have a Curtis Barnes biology textbook, and it has one of the most honest accounts of Charlie's life, I think, from a secular source than many have read otherwise. But it starts right off in 1831. Young Charles Darwin, well, here we go. He was a candidate for the clergy. You know, Darwin, most books will say when Darwin quit university or whatever, they never say what he went for. He thought he believed his Bible. He was an amateur botanist and geologist. You always hear about Darwin was this big child. No, he was an amateur nobody. He took a job without pay for 5 years. But like this last sentence says, his lifetime of independent work and study radically changed our view of life and of our place in the living world, causing everybody's thinking to start changing a little bit. Now, Darwin took a lot of books with him. He took his Bible, actually. He thought he believed it. He took a lot of books with him. He took the book, The Principles of Geology. Volume 1, this is Charles Lyell's book, that he broke out this geologic column for the first time in history. This is the book that the idea of this geologic column took place in the first place. And it was written just the year before the Beagle Writing. This is the book right here that destroyed Darwin's faith in his Bible. As he's reading this thing, it caused his thinking to start looking different directions, because if this is true, then this can't be true, kind of a thing. And that's all. And so it was a catalyst. And I find it amazing, because all the textbooks these days are talking about how Darwin's thinking was so influenced by the books he took. The Principles of Geology, specifically, Lyell's first book. All of them talk about that. I find that amazing, because that's what's causing people's thinking to be different today, even still in this society. Nevertheless, it's still going on today. But, hey, Darwin's home is a museum now, and there are two, I think, disturbing signs that hang in that thing. Here's one of them. This is part of Charlie's autobiography. I'd gradually come at this time to see the Old Testament from its manifestly false history of the world, the Tower of Babel, the rainbow's a sign, etc., etc. From its attributing to God the feelings of a revengeful tyrant was no more to be trusted than the sacred books of the Hindus or the beliefs of any barbarian. I find that kind of amazing. Here's another sign that hangs in there. Many Christians believe that the world and everything in it, including mankind, had been created by God in the beginning, remained unaltered ever since. Darwin's theory made nonsense of all this. He said the world was a constantly changing place, and all living creatures were changing too. Far from being created in God's own image, Darwin suggested that human life had probably started out as something far more primitive. The story of Adam and Eve was a myth. And folks, that's what the books are doing these days too. They're saying that the Bible is wrong, the biblical account is wrong, the biblical theologians are wrong, it can't be 6,000 years, it can't, I mean, the ridicule is here. Listen, if we are really at the place in our society, and really we are, I used to go into public schools all the time. I'd have 5, 6, 7, 8 meetings a week in different public schools. I still go into public schools, but it's getting a lot harder. Why? Do you realize, folks, if a creationist is so goofy and such a nutcase, we have zero evidence on our side, schools ought to welcome a creationist to come in to show everybody how stupid they are. I mean, what is the problem then? I find it amazing if we're at the point in our society where we're only going to show one side of a coin, knowing there's another side, and we don't even let people see that side, then we really don't have education. We're in the middle of indoctrination at that point. And that is where we are. If the books can ridicule creation, somebody ought to be able to go in and defend it. And that's just being honest and open about things, you know. But I guess the open-minded folks maybe aren't as open-minded as they present sometimes to me. Hey, new scientists writing about creation versus evolution. They say it's a battle for science soul. Hey, you know what, folks? I see it as a battle for people's soul. That's what it's about. I mean, that's what it's all about. But anyway, Darwin sails along. He notices the finch. You know, he hones in on the finch and the tortoise and different plants and everything. And Charlie said, you know, some of those finch have big old heavy dense beaks, and some of them have wimpy old beaks. Charlie said, maybe all those 13 variety of finch, maybe they all go back to a single common ancestor. A single finch species back in time somewhere. Well, yeah. I mean, that's not too hard to figure out. A finch will have a finch for an ancestor. I mean, that seems pretty straightforward to me. But then they took it a step further. Darwin said, you know, maybe if those finch have a common ancestor, well, maybe they have the same ancestors, the giraffe and the cabbage and the elephants and rhinos and tomato plants and us. And sometimes people think, well, that's kind of weird, you know, who would believe that? Well, the people who put the books together do. The people who put museum displays do. Oftentimes, more often than not, the people who teach the books do. I mean, it's amazing. How about this glycobiology? All the many forms of life on Earth today are descended from a common ancestor. All the forms of life on Earth right now are, taught as a fact, they all go back to a common ancestor. Something gave birth to twins back in time. Well, folks, anybody's free to believe whatever they want to. But that's not science then. By the way, it even says, let me back up here if I can. No traces of those events remain. Well, I kind of find that amazing. If there's no trace, there's no observation. You can't go back in time to see what happened. Go to the scientific method, observing and constructing experiments to